Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Books with Meena. I'm Meena and today I'm going to be doing my April wrap up. So basically this is the video where I discuss about all the books that I read in the month of April. I read a total of 6 books and I deviated quite a bit from my TBR. But overall it was still a good reading month and I enjoyed most of what I read. So let's just jump right in. The first book that I read was Just Last Night by Very McFarlane, and this one is, I would say, like an adult contemporary. I guess technically it would fall into the chick lit or women's fiction genre, but basically this one is an adult contemporary about Evie or Eve. She is 34 years old and she calls herself an aging goth. She is a part of this friend group. There is Evie, Susie, Justin, and Ed, and they have known each other since their college days, and now they are in their mid 30s, so they have known each other for quite a long time, and they are very close to each other. Evie has had feelings towards Ed for quite some time, but she hasn't really made a move towards him or tried to do anything about it because he has been dating another person for quite some time. And basically Evie has been in love with Ed for like over 10 years, so it's quite a long time. And at the beginning of the book, basically something happens within these four group of friends which changes their dynamics forever. Secrets come out, and their lives basically change forever, and that is where this book starts off. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I think overall it was a really good, well written book. I have read other books by this author, and a total of 4 books as of now, and all of her books have this a sense of lightheartedness, and they're very much filled with humor, and they're mostly like fun books, but they also talk a lot about adulting and more serious topics. And a lot of them, if you're looking for something which is coming of age, but instead of following teenagers, you're following 30-year-old women or like people in their mid 30s or something. I think Very McFarlane does this kind of formula quite well, where you have Eve in this case who is 34. She has been in love with the guy for more than 10 years and really hasn't done anything about it. And she's also in this dead end job. She does not like it. Basically her life is at a dead end, and throughout this book she's starting to get to know more about herself, her choices, and things about other people that affects her, those kind of things, and she decides to take steps towards having more control in her life. One of the main topics that is discussed in this book is loss of a loved one. Right when you read the prologue, you get to know that Eve has lost someone who is very close to her. And so I guess one of the main topics of this book is grief, death, loss of a loved one, and you get to see Eve having to grapple with this new reality in which this person that she was really close to and she loved no longer exists. I wouldn't say that's exactly a spoiler, but definitely right at the beginning in the prologue itself, you know that something bad has happened. And a lot of books, when something tragic happens, the characters mourn for a couple of pages or chapters and then they move on. And I get that might be necessary for some kind of plots and stories, but in this book, throughout the book, you're getting to see Evie or Eve, processing her grief, and just thinking about this person that she loved so much that is no longer present in her life. And like I said, it's like the main focus of this book, so definitely know that going into it. I have seen it being marketed as like a rom-com, and there is comedy and romance in this book, but it is definitely not a rom-com. I would call this more of like a hard-hitting read. One of the most interesting things about this book was the friend group. You start off getting to see these four people being friends for like over 10-15 years, and they know each other so well. It's almost aspirational, this type of a friend group where they have kept in touch for such a long time. They know each other so well. There's a lot of banter and in jokes, all of that. But slowly throughout the book, you get to see more facets of their friendship and their dynamics. There's, like I said, some secrets come out, and Evie has to look back into her past and her choices and the people that she has known and reevaluate things. And I think that was done really well. I will say that some people might take issue with Eve as a character because she does tend to be a little bit passive, and for a person who's like 34, she can still come across as a little bit naive and gullible. But that did not bother me because I just took that as that's just who she is. She likes to trust people, she likes to see the best in them, and she is probably a little bit passive, and she does go through some amount of growth throughout the book. So overall, a 4 out of 5 stars. It was a very solid book. I definitely, Very McFarlane is an author that I can always look towards reading whenever I need something that is, a good balance of hard hitting plus light-hearted stuff. The next book that I read is The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danan, and this one is an adult contemporary romance. And this one is about Naomi Grant, who used to work in the adult entertainment industry. She used to be a porn star, and now she has her own company where she talks about modern intimacy. And then we have Ethan, who is a rabbi of a synagogue, and his synagogue is basically about to shut down. There's not a lot of members or funding for the synagogue, and he needs to revive it. So basically, Naomi and Ethan come together and they decide to host this seminar on modern intimacy, which Naomi is going to host, and it is going to take place in Ethan's synagogue so that he can attract a younger and larger crowd, whereas Naomi can also expand her platform and her name. This one also got a 4 out of 5 stars from me. I think this was a very solid romance book. The first book in this companion romance series, The Roommate, I read last year, and it was a really fun book. I just, that book really surprised me in so many ways, because it was not only like a cute, sweet, steamy romance, but at the same time, it also talked a lot about some more like serious issues, and so does this book. It is a very good combination of, again, the romantic aspects, the more fluffier aspects, and it combines a discussion about religion as seen in modern day and how people can be religious or have faith as a part of their lives in modern day. And I'm obviously I don't think I'll be able to do this book justice when I'm talking about how this book talks about religion, but it did a really good job of that. I think that a lot of the discussions that were taking place were just done so well and thoughtful, and I really can't say more than that, but I really enjoyed and appreciated that part of the book. As for the romance itself, it was definitely more of a sweet, wholesome kind of romance. I was almost expecting more steam, because I thought that this would be Naomi's book, so there would be more amount of steam, but I did not mind what I got. I think my only complaint would be that I just wish that I feel like sometimes the romance plot was overtaken by the other, like, more serious topics. And while that is, those things are necessary to be discussed, I just wanted to see more of Naomi and Ethan. Their dynamic and the tropes used in this book are ones that I will enjoy no matter in any book. You have like a prickly, no nonsense heroine who is very assertive and independent, and you have like a more sweet cinnamon roll introverted hero, and this kind of a dynamic will always work for me in any book, so it worked for me in this book too. Not to say that the romance wasn't well written on its own. To be quite honest, I was expecting to give this book like a 5 out of 5 stars. I wanted to love it so much, and I ended up liking it a lot, but it just wasn't quite the perfect 5 out of 5 star that I was looking for. But it was still a good book, and I do recommend it. I do recommend checking out Rosie Damon's previous book to The Roommate, and this is her newest one, The Intimacy Experiment. The only reason I deducted like 1 star would be that just sometimes I thought that the conversations that the characters would have felt a little unnatural, especially Ethan. The way that he would talk just seemed like, he would say things that normal people just don't say, and it almost felt pretentious. And Ethan is not exactly pretentious, but the things that he would say made him feel like that to me. But I don't know, that maybe that's just him. He is like a huge like philosopher nerd. He loves like reading. He's a very scholarly person, so I understand why he would like talk that way, but it still bothered me a little bit. Also, the first 1/3 of the book was quite repetitive, especially in Naomi's chapters, where she would go on and on about her struggles and why she has had to put up walls around herself to protect herself. Like, I get it, we already kind of got this kind of prelude to her character and her personality in the previous book, and I would have been okay with it being mentioned a couple of times here and there in this book too. But in the first 1/3 to 1/2, like the half of the book, it was mentioned so many times that it got quite repetitive, and I was a little bit annoyed at that. So I think these are the main 2 points why I would deduct like a 1 star. Other than that, this was a really well written, enjoyable romance. The next book that I completed was The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp, and this one I had already started in the month of March, and I carried it over to the month of April. It took me quite some time to read this book, almost like more than 2 weeks, and I gave this one a 3 star. It was not a bad book. This one is about Nora, who basically gets taken hostage in a bank robbery situation where she and her friends, her ex-boyfriend and her current girlfriend, get taken hostage along with the other people that are present in the bank. And now she has to kind of find out a way as to how to like get out of the situation. And in the past, Nora used to be with her mom, who was a con artist. So Nora knows some things about conning people and tricking people, that kind of thing. So she is using her knowledge of those things to get out of this bank robbery hostage situation. So this book was, like I have mentioned before, I already have a review on this book. So if you want to go check that out, you can do that if you want more in-depth thoughts. But just to give like a brief mini review, I would say that this book was darker and much more serious and heavy than I was expecting. It has a lot of talk about trauma, abuse, healing, because Nora definitely went through all of that in her childhood with her mom, not only at the hands of her mom, but also the people that her mom would target. They were quite shitty to her, and yeah, so Nora just has had a really hard childhood, and even in present day, when she is in her late teens, she is still struggling with all of the trauma that she has suffered. If you're looking for a character-driven thriller, I would definitely recommend this because it is quite focused on the characters and the relationships, all of those things. The chapters alternate between present and past day. In the present day, you are following Nora and her girlfriend Iris, her ex-boyfriend Wes, in the bank, and in the past you're following Nora as a kid as she is growing up with her mom and just learning stuff about her surroundings. Yes, this one is quite character driven, and unfortunately I just did not care about the characters that much. If I had, I would have given this a higher rating. It definitely took me quite some time to finish reading this book, over 2 weeks, and that is like a good enough sign for me to get to know that I didn't really care about the characters. Even the relationships that were portrayed in this book mostly fell flat, especially the ones at the center, which were the romantic relationship between Nora and Iris and the kind of platonic friendship between Nora and Wes. They just like fell flat for me. They didn't really do anything. I definitely think that the relationship between Nora, her mom, and her elder sister were quite interesting and complicated, and that was one of my favorite parts of the book. But overall, it was just okay for me, like a little bit forgettable. I then read The Mirror Season by Anna Mary McLemore, and I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. This one is a very loose retelling of the Snow Queen, and you're following Ciela, who basically gets sexually assaulted at this party at the hands of some of her classmates, and alongside with her there is this other guy who also gets sexually assaulted at the same party and at the hands of the same people, except that Ciela remembers everything that has happened, but this guy doesn't. And both of them kind of form this friendship, and it kind of leads to a romance. This book is a lot about healing from trauma and healing from like sexual assault and abuse. I have read a couple of books in the past few months about this topic, sexual assault and rape, and it was interesting to see how a lot of these books, how every different book was focusing differently on the different aspects of sexual assault and rape. So in The Female of the Species, it talked more about rape culture and how people tend to get away with it because of societal norms. And then we have in Parachutes, where it talks more about the social injustices, the systemic issues, that kind of thing. And in this book, this was much more personal and emotional. Not to say that those books didn't have emotions and everything in them, but this one definitely felt way more personal and emotional. The writing style of Anna Marie McLemore is already quite beautiful and whimsical, and I definitely enjoyed or appreciated that part of the book. The writing was just really whimsical. It has a little bit of magical realism in it. And I have read this author's one other book, and that is Blanca and Roja. In that, the magic was a little bit out there. In this book, it was a little bit more contained because the main character can make pan dulces. Is that how it's pronounced? So in this, the main character basically, when she sees a person, she can automatically guess which pan dulce is going to be the best for them. That's like her magical ability. And she loses it at the beginning of the book because of what happened at the party, and slowly she is regaining her magical powers. And that was almost like a metaphor for her healing process and how it is not a linear process. There are ups and downs, highs and lows, and I think that was portrayed really well. I cannot speak for the representation of all of that, but this one was, like I said, a very emotional and personal story for the author. So while I cannot speak for the representation itself, but the author themselves have, in the author's note, if you read that, you will understand more. And I do recommend, if you read this book, to read the author's note also. So obviously this was quite a hard-hitting book, and I really liked it. I appreciated all the topics and discussions that it had. I think that the characters, the writing, all of that was done so well, and I really enjoyed the magical atmosphere in this book. But also there's going to be a lot of trigger warnings with this kind of a book, And I would say that, go to Goodreads to look up more specific ones, but also Books and Lala posted her, I think her most recent video was her April wrap up. And in the last segment, she talks about this book in more detail. So if you want very specific spoilers, if you are sensitive to this kind of topic, I would highly, highly recommend you check out her video, because she talks about it much better than I ever could. And, while I do recommend this book, beware of the content that it has. So I read quite a lot of hard-hitting, heavy books, and I was looking for something more light-hearted to read. I picked up Charming as a Verb by Ben Phillip, and this one is a YA, I would say contemporary rom-com. It's taking place in New York City. The main character is Henry, and he is first-generation American. His parents are immigrants, and they have very high hopes on him to get into Columbia University. He has this like dog walking business where basically it's like a way for him to earn money to support his college dreams. But his neighbor Corey, who also happens to go to his school, she catches him doing something unethical and blackmails him into introducing her into the social sphere, the social groups in the school, I guess, because she is known to be quite intense. And she wants to change her persona to being more amiable and sociable in front of the teacher, so that she can get a better recommendation letter for her college application, application, what do you say, recommendations. So yes, so basically you get to see, a lot of the characters in this book doing a lot to get into their dream colleges. A huge portion of this book definitely talks about the stress and anxiety that comes along with college admissions, and the pressure, anxiety, all of that, the stress. You definitely see Henry dealing with his want to go to Columbia University, whether it's something he wants or his parents want. I think that topic was discussed quite relatably and realistically. I think a lot of people will definitely be able to connect with this kind of, basically with this topic. Even though this was like more of a serious thing or discussion happening in the book, most of the book was quite lighthearted and fun. I definitely enjoyed my time reading it quite a lot. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I just, this was the kind of book that I needed at this point of time, because I had been reading some stuff that was quite heavy and hard hitting, and I was looking forward to reading something just light and fun, and this book definitely gave me that. Henry is somewhat of a charmer. He has, he's like a social butterfly. Everybody likes him. He has a lot of friends in school. On the other hand, Corey or Corin is just, she's, like I said, intense, quite straightforward, doesn't really have a lot of friends, isn't very popular. And getting to see their budding friendship and romance was just so cute. Both of them make such a good couple. Henry as a main character was quite flawed and not perfect at all. He makes so many decisions which were quite questionable, but at the end of the day you totally understand where he's coming from and you sympathize with him. Corey, on the other hand, she was like the star of this book for me. I loved her so much. She's the kind of person who doesn't only have high standards for everyone else, but also for herself. She holds herself to these high standards, and she's just so passionate about the things that she cares about. And honestly, she was quite an inspirational character for me. So yes, definitely recommend this book if you're looking for something cute, fun, taking place in New York City. It has dogs in it. That's a lot of fun. So yes, 5 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I managed to finish this month was Milk Teeth by Amrita Mahale. And this one is, I would say, like a historical adult literary fiction kind of book, something that I don't normally pick up and read. And this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. It's taking place in 1997 Bombay. You're following two characters who have been childhood best friends, and then they kind of got estranged a little bit as they went to college, and now they are reconnecting now that they are closer to their 30s. So we have Karthik Kinney, who is working in an MNC and he has a really well-paying job. We have Ira Kamath, the second main character, and she is working in this like local newspaper as a reporter. So you can almost say that the third character in this book, apart from Karthik and Ira, would be the city of Bombay itself. The author does a really good job of describing the city. The writing is not, I wouldn't call the writing like very magical or purple prose. It's descriptive, but it still isn't like a very flowery writing style. It shows like the more glorified, romanticized aspects of Bombay, as well as the other side of things where it's more dark and gritty, I guess you can say. And I thought I really appreciated that kind of The setting of Bombay is obviously very prevalent in this book. You get to see the different people, the communities, the interactions between people, the atmosphere, the environment, the social political kind of climate at this point of time in 1997. Also, another plot point in this book is the main character's building where they live, and they have lived there for like over 20-30 years. The landlord wants to tear down this building because it's like crumbling. He wants to build a new one and sell it off, so he is telling his tenants to move out of there. But obviously the tenants are not really in the financial condition to be able to afford that, so they are protesting against this. And this is also a time in Bombay, the 1990s, I think, where a lot of reconstruction was happening. So, the book gives some amount of commentary on that too. So overall, this book was quite well written. I really, really enjoyed it. And I just, liked so many of the topics it covered. A lot of the discussions that were had were just so nuanced and complex and really hit home and were quite relatable to me, even though I don't live in Bombay and I wasn't growing up in the 1990s, but a lot of these things that were discussed in the book were quite relatable and they hit home. Again, with the writing, it was really impactful. I'm not the kind of person or reader who likes to pick out quotes from books. I don't really pay attention to them. But this book definitely had 2 or 3 of them which stood out to me quite a bit, and that really goes to show that how much I enjoyed the writing in this book. The only reason I would deduct 1 star would be that this book just did not have much of a plot. It is very much centered around the characters, and you get to know about them growing up from when they are like 5-6 year old children to now when they're in their late 20s. And so you have a very good, well-rounded idea of these characters and what they are like, their lives, their past, everything. You have a very good idea of that. It's a very character driven story, but majority of the book you just spend getting to know these characters, and then there is just not much of plot happening. So this is the last book that I read in the month of April. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, enjoyed it quite a bit. I definitely want to read more Indian published books, and this was like one of the first ones I picked up in quite some time. I randomly picked it up and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So I would definitely like to give more Indian published books a try in the future. So I DNF'd one book this month, and that is Darius the Great is Not Okay. I picked it up, I read about 50% of it, and it was a good book. I really appreciated some of the topics that it was talking about, the main 2 ones being the cultural diaspora that the main character faces because he is half white and half Iranian. He has never really seen the Iranian side of his family or culture that much, and he's not very connected to it. So it's his first time going to Iran and getting to see all of these new things and get to know more about that side of his culture and family. The other main topic of this book is depression and the main character's mental health. And I think that was one of the reasons that I put this book down, because the main character, Darius, he is just so down on himself. He just does not think he's enough. And that was really getting to me. It was bogging me down quite a bit. So I did not want to read it because it was affecting my own mood. So I DNF'd it. But I would still recommend you giving a shot to this book if you want to read it. Just know that it does talk about these things, and it can definitely be a little the tone of this book is definitely quite sad and serious. I am currently in the middle of Yolk. Somehow the month of April kind of got away from me. I had plans to read more books. I had planned to finish Yolk by the end of the month, but I'm still 50-60% of the way through it. It's good so far. I will give a full review by the end of May when I actually finish the book. And that is it for this wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it. Do let me know what you read in the month of April, and be sure to comment, like, share, subscribe if you wish to do so. And that is it for this video. Goodbye.